Alright, hello everyone. Today I want to go over variable valve timing phasers on the Mazdaspeed platforms, and I guess a lot of these this would correlate to other variable valve timing systems on different platforms. But today I'm just going to go over the ones on the Mazdaspeeds. I'll go over what goes wrong with these, how they function, and something to look out for when you are doing a variable valve timing job on these cars. Okay, first of all, I want to start out with what fails on these. So if you flip this up here, if you look inside there, that is the locking pin for your variable valve timing phaser. Inside there should be a spring and then a cap, which obviously you see in this case there is not. And then there's actually a chunk missing there. So that's what fails on these. Those caps basically blow apart, or a portion of the body falls apart. Here's a new one here. You can see there's a cap there, and then inside there's a spring. So that's what fails on these. Those caps and springs essentially blow apart, and then there's nothing holding that pin in place anymore. So how these work, if we pull this cap off here, there's just a few main components to these. Obviously you got your cap, there would be your screws that would hold that cap and everything in place. You've got your phaser body, the sprocket, rotor, and then there should in theory be each of these little slots or grooves, there would be seals which function and kind of look, I guess, similar to what a apex seal would be in a rotary engine. Essentially they're just a little spring-loaded deal, and in this case they're just plastic. So how this works is on the end of your intake cam, each one of these oil passages line up with a hole or oil passage on your intake cam. So when your oil control valve or variable valve timing solenoid opens up, allowing oil pressure to go through the end of the cam and intake those oil passages, it does a couple things. One, I'm going to pull this apart here a little bit further. What it does is, so it goes through these oil passages. If you flip this around here, and this hole right here is where your locking pin is. And in fact, I'll show you here. I'll just push it out. So see that? There's the locking pin right there. And that just locks into right there on the rotor itself. So what happens is your control valve opens up, allows the oil pressure to go through these oil passages, which in return allows oil pressure to go into this hole, pushing the pin up, which it just overcomes the spring pressure that's always constantly on that pin. So yeah, it opens up that pin, allows for your rotor, this guy here, to now move. Now when it moves, if you look inside here, it also has, so there's a port right there that's also connected to your pin, essentially there. Once oil pressure pushes that pin up, it allows oil pressure to come through this slot right here and then fill up these chambers, which would then push your rotor over into its actuated state, and then all of these oil passages down on there would fill up and hold this where it is right now in its actuated state, which would allow for different cam duration, essentially. And then obviously once your oil control valve closes, just due to the normal rotation of the motor, it would naturally come back to its normal state, and that locking pin would lock it back into its regular state. And there is also, inside the rotor here, pull it out, you see there's also oil passages there. Each one of those oil passages essentially just fills up these chambers on the opposite side of which the those passages would be. So when it's closed right there, each one of those oil passages allows to fill up the chambers, which would essentially keep this from rattling around. Because even when, and I'll actuate the pin here, even when that rotor is locked into place, if it did not have oil pressure going to those chambers, as you can see, it would still move and rattle. So anyways, that's how variable valve timing phasers work. Like I said, and this one in particular is from a Mazdaspeed 3. And I showed you already what fails on them. So when you are doing the variable valve timing jog, like I said, it is critical that those oil passages do line up with the oil passages on the end of your intake cam, because otherwise it will not function. One other thing to look out for, and if you do have a good actuator, it shouldn't be an issue. However, if there's something wrong with the actuator, it's something to look out for too. If you look on the cap here, there is a notch there, and then on the rotor itself there is a notch. When that rotor is locked into its normal state, both of those notches will line up. Let me push that pin out and show you here. So when it is not in its normal state, so say it's actuated or not locked into place, you will see now that those do not line up anymore. So just make sure that those notches are lined up, and I believe it should be like that on every single actuator. I don't know about the aftermarket ones. This one's a Dorman one right here, and it does still have those notches there. But anyways, that's how they work. That's what goes wrong with them. Something to look out for, like I said, and make sure that those oil passages do indeed line up with the ones on your cam. Otherwise, it will not work, and you will have to do it again, which, if you know the Mazdaspeed platform, or I guess the Ford platform, it's the same essentially on the Ford 2.3s, I believe. I think Duratax, and then the 2 liters, whatever uses the same variable valve timing setup. It is a pain, because if you do have to take it apart, you have to replace all your friction washers again, and then all your torque to your yield bolts. And if you've done this before, you know that they're not cheap, because you can only get them through Mazda, unfortunately, other than the crank bolt. I believe ARP does make a crank bolt for them. So make sure you do it right the first time, line those up, and you should be good to go. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I don't know if I'll be able to answer every question. I'm not a certified mechanic or an engineer. However, I've been messing around with cars for quite a while, especially on the Mazdaspeed platforms. And so now I've kind of learned a few things here and there. If I missed anything, feel free to comment and let me know. Thanks for watching.